In the 2000s, the spread offense started its takeover of college football, and at the forefront of this movement was the Oregon Ducks, led by Chip Kelly. They would go on to lead a revolution that would change college football forever, but in their way was the old school, pro-style offenses of the time, and one of its fiercest supporters, Jim Harbaugh, head coach of the Stanford Cardinal. And these two would create one of the most important rivalries in college football, showing the highs and lows of these two vastly different offensive philosophies. We start with Oregon, one of the major innovators of the time, hiring Chip Kelly in February of 2007 to be their offensive coordinator, and he brought with him a revolutionary offense. Kelly ran a spread option system, being one of the first teams to use a no-huddle approach, as they wanted to run plays as fast as possible, establishing the run with the zone read before finding big plays off of play action. They specialized in speed, preferring to get their athletes the ball in open space and letting their speed do the rest of the work. Guys like LaMichael James, Kenyon Barner, and DeAnthony Thomas were main weapons during Chip Kelly's time at Oregon. After the Ducks brought Kelly in, their offense would see immediate improvement, as they went from 25th in scoring to 12th. And Kelly would be promoted to head coach before the 2009 season, and he would go on to lead the Ducks to a top 10 scoring offense every season that he was the head coach of the Ducks, until he left for the NFL in January of 2013. Meanwhile, Stanford was being led by head coach Jim Harbaugh, who took over in December of 2006 after 3 years as the head coach at the University of San Diego. Much the opposite of Kelly, Harbaugh wanted to establish a power run game. He would use multiple tight ends and a fullback to pound the ball down the opposing team's throat. They wanted to wear down your defense with a relentless rushing attack, which sets up their play-action passing game. Harbaugh took over a Stanford team that was a mess, having not had a winning season since 2001, coincidentally the last time that they beat the Ducks. The year before Harbaugh's arrival, Stanford had the second worst points per game in college football, averaging just over 10 points a game. And after 3 seasons of steady improvement and the emergence of Andrew Luck, Harbaugh would build a top 10 scoring offense of his own, helping develop multiple future pros, including 2 future Hall of Famers in Andrew Luck and Richard Sherman. Harbaugh would leave for the NFL in January of 2011, and his offensive coordinator, David Shaw, would take over as head coach for the Cardinal, keeping the same offensive philosophy for the most part. The Ducks would blow out the Cardinal 55-31 in 2007 in the first meeting between these vastly different offensive philosophies. The following year, Oregon would win on a last-second touchdown run by LeGarrette Blount, but both meetings, Oregon was the superior team with way more talent, as they were already an established program. However, in year 3, things would start to change, as Luck would take over as the starter for the Cardinal, and their roster would be a vast improvement from what it was in year 1. Meanwhile, up in Eugene, the arrival of Kelly and his innovative offense led Oregon to become a national powerhouse, as their dynamic offense took the college football world by storm. We'll look at 2 games that best encapsulate the 2 philosophies and their glaring differences. First, we start in 2009. The Ducks are one of the hottest teams in college football coming into their meeting with the Cardinal. Coming off a dominant win over USC, they were squarely in the national title picture, led by Jeremiah Masoli and LaMichael James. Their offense was as dynamic as any in the country, and they could score at any time and erase big deficits in the blink of an eye. On the other side, the Cardinal entered at 5-3, being held under 30 points just twice all season, with redshirt freshman Andrew Luck now the starter. Their passing game was a big improvement from the previous year, but the key to their offense was Toby Gerhart, a physical runner who embraced contact and was a nightmare to bring down. They were going to call power and you had to simply man up, meet them in the trenches, or get run over. So we head to Palo Alto, and Stanford would jump out to a 24-7 lead early, as they would get a field goal on their first drive before getting 2 long touchdown drives that were capped off by Gerhardt runs, and then a 41-yard strike from Luck to Owusu. Their offense looked unstoppable. Meanwhile, Oregon was struggling to get much going. Aside from a long LaMichael James touchdown run, their offense was trying to get the ball on the edges where they had a speed advantage, as they did against basically everybody else, but it wasn't working, as their execution just wasn't there. The Oregon offense would finally put a drive together, but it would end on a turnover. Thankfully for them, Stanford would give them the ball right back, allowing Masoli to find Jeff Mail for a 29-yard touchdown. But Stanford would get right back to work, as their power run game would set up a play-action pass where Luck would find Ryan Whalen on a 39-yard completion, and 2 plays later, it's the fullback and occasional linebacker Owen Marisic who would pound it in to give the Cardinal a 31-14 lead at the half. The Cardinal power run game dominated the first half, as Oregon's defense had no answer, as they were consistently getting pushed back by the much more physical Stanford offensive line, and Toby Gerhardt was running through the Ducks defense like a madman. The Ducks would storm right down the field to open the third in 2 minutes, with Masoli finding Jameer Holland on a 40-yard touchdown pass, showing the quick strike potential of the Ducks offense. And after both sides were forced to punt, Stanford's offense would get right back to work, with a long Gerhardt run setting up a Luck strike to Owusu for a 31-yard score. The Cardinal were in complete control, but the Ducks' quick strike offense would get right back to it, as James would take a screen pass 55 yards down to the Cardinal 3, where Masoli would punch it in to cut the lead back to 10. However, the Stanford offense would continue to run through the Ducks defense, as Gerhardt would cap off another Stanford drive with a 17-yard touchdown run for the Stanford legend. The Ducks' high-powered offense would drive right into Stanford territory, but fail to convert on a huge 4th down, as the Cardinal would get a chance to expand their lead even more. Gerhardt would then power the Cardinal offense back down into Ducks territory, but be held to a field goal, as Stanford's lead would grow to 48-28. The Ducks get the ball back, and they would go right down the field with a 12-play drive that only lasted 2 minutes and 43 seconds, as Barner would take it in from the 1-yard line to cut into the Stanford lead. The Cardinal would get the ball back and try to drain the clock, but a missed field goal gives the Ducks a chance to make it a 1-possession game, and they would do it with just 5 plays and 54 seconds. The Ducks would put the ball back in the end zone, cutting the lead to 6, as the Ducks' quick strike offense continues its epic comeback. But the Stanford power run game would dominate the Ducks D one final time, setting up a field goal to end Oregon's comeback, as the Cardinal would win 51-41. The old school power run game of the Cardinal could not be stopped all night. A great example of what this offense could be at its peak. One of the most draining styles of football out there. At times, defenses can be powerless to stop it, and it can be a real treat to watch, until that's your favorite team getting bullied. A year later, we head up to Eugene, with both teams ranked in the top 25 for the first time in this rivalry's history, and the Ducks would have a new quarterback with Darren Thomas taking over, making them an even more explosive offense. Meanwhile, Stanford now had a top 10 offense of their own, and while they lost Gerhardt to the NFL, Stephon Taylor would take over, leading the ground game for the Cardinal, and he would go on to rush for over 1,000 yards in all 3 years as a starter for the Cardinal. And for the second year in a row, Stanford jumps out to a quick lead, as their offense would continue to look unstoppable early, starting with an 11-play 6-minute drive that ends in a Luck touchdown pass to Griff Whalen Oregon would turn the ball over on their next 2 possessions, and the Cardinal would turn those into touchdowns, with a Luck TD run followed up by Stephen Taylor taking one 44 yards to the house, putting the Cardinal up 21-3. But the Ducks had the highest scoring offense in college football, so they were by no means out of it, and on their next drive, a fake screen would leave Jeff Mayo wide open for a 29-yard strike to get the Ducks going. Chip Kelly would then make a massive call, going with a surprise onside kick that would be recovered by the Ducks kicker, and the Oregon offense would move quickly, with James finishing it off, and suddenly, in the blink of an eye, the Stanford lead had been cut to 4. But Harbaugh had a dynamic offense of his own, and they would put a drive together that would end in a 36-yard touchdown strike from Luck to Kobe Fleener as the Stanford offense continues to look incredible. But the Ducks would strike quickly again, with Thomas finding Josh Huff on a 41-yard touchdown pass as the Ducks offense suddenly cannot be stopped. Thomas would throw a pick late in the half, and Luck would drive the Cardinal down into field goal range, where they would cash in to take a 31-24 lead at the half. The second half, though, would be all Ducks, as Andrew Luck would throw 2 interceptions and the Stanford offense would fail to muster a single point. But on the other side, Oregon's offense did basically whatever it wanted, scoring on 4 of their 6 possessions as LaMichael James and Darren Thomas showcased just how lethal Chip Kelly's innovative offense could be. They could score at any time, and before you know it, the game is a blowout in their favor. And Harbaugh's offense, built around sustaining long drives, would fail to be able to keep up with Chip Kelly's high-scoring offense. Oregon and Stanford would continue their fun rivalry in the years following, even after Kelly and Harbaugh would leave for the NFL, with many classic games taking place between the 2 schools. Unfortunately, this rivalry will likely be lost with the conference realignment currently taking place. But the matchups between Oregon and Stanford in the 2010s were the peak of the war between the pro-style offense and the spread, as every single year these 2 teams would go head-to-head with 2 vastly different offensive philosophies. The spread offense would go on to take over college football and even parts of the NFL, as the game would undergo a revolution that's still taking place today. Meanwhile, the pro-style offense has fallen off in the college game, though there are still holdouts like Harbaugh at Michigan, but most of the top offenses use a variation of the spread today. A huge part of the change is the mobility of the modern-day quarterback. Being able to use your quarterback as a runner is a massive advantage, as they force the defense to play 11 on 11, and the spread also forces the defense to defend from sideline to sideline. Hopefully, though, the more old-school pro-style offense doesn't get lost in time, as we've seen with the flexbone, which is on the verge of extinction, as the military academies are the only place you can find it in college football. But with the spread continuing to take over, the only question left is, will the pro-style offenses of the 2000s and the 2010s die a similar death to the flexbone?